And welcome back to another episode of Crunch Time. As usual, I'm your host Noah Elkin, here with.
Awesome, man. As usual, we have a variety of topics from the world of sports, so Noah, hit me with it.
All right, Austin. So Des Bryant, this is kind of a sad story. As most of you probably know, he was a free agent for pretty much the whole first half of the season. On Thursday, he signed a deal with the Saints for $600,000 for the rest of the season. The very next day, on Friday, he tears his Achilles tendon, done for the season, maybe done for his career.
I just gotta say, that's a big bummer. I mean, I can't help but feel bad for Des Bryant just because he's been looking for a team all season, especially a contender, because he's been playing on very mediocre Cowboys teams over the past few years, and I knew he wanted to win. But it's also a little funny, just like he was only signed for one day, and literally the first practice with the team, he tears his ACL or Achilles. My bad. But I don't know. I still don't think it really hurts the Saints' Super Bowl chances. I think that we don't. It might have helped Drew Brees, but I think the Saints look really good right now. It would be nice to have that solid number 2 option after Michael Thomas, but I still think the Saints will recover from this.
Yeah, agreed. And, even though maybe they only have one really good receiver in Michael Thomas, you still got Kamara, who's a pretty polished pass catcher, who can come out of the backfield and make plays in the slot for you. So I think at the end of the day, the Saints probably would have been better off with Des Bryant. I think that was a mutually beneficial deal. However, they're still definitely one of the best teams in the NFL and for sure Super Bowl contenders.
I agree. I don't really see Des Bryant helping the team as much as people were expecting him to. Just because the Saints already have their established guys with their roles, like Kamara and Thomas are their 2 leading pass catchers. But it'd just be nice to have that third reliable option. But I still think the Saints are going to the Super Bowl, so with or without Des Bryant, they're still wet.
Yeah, agreed. Speaking of injuries on Super Bowl contenders, the Rams actually lost Cooper Kupp with an ACL tear, so he's now out for the season. So that's two receivers on 2 Super Bowl contenders going down the same week. And we've talked about the Rams receiving corps being arguably the best in the NFL. How do you think this affects them going forward?
I mean, it's a bummer because Cooper Kupp is, I think, a top 5 receiver in the slot in the NFL just because he's so quick, so agile, and it's reliable. But at the end of the day, the Rams still have Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods lining up on the outside, and they still have Todd Gurley. So I really don't see this hurting them as much as maybe Des Bryant to the Saints, just because they already have those 2 solid receivers who can put up big numbers right away. But it's still a bummer just because it's he's been having a good season. You hate to see a player of his caliber go down. And he's a fun guy to watch playing. He reminds me of Wes Welker in his prime just because he's a short white dude who's really nimble and fast and can go Chris routes and is just reliable. So I think it would hurt Jared Goff just because he's kind of like Jared Goff's safety blanket in the offense. But you have Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods who, if they were on different teams, they'd both be number 1 receivers. But really, they're just 1A and 1B. And it just depends on who's 1A for the game they're having.
Yeah, and the last few weeks, the Rams have actually been without Cooper Kupp. He was dealing with a different injury, not so serious one. And it didn't really seem to slow them down. They got their first loss of the season to the Saints, but I don't think you can really chalk that up to a lack of Cooper Kupp. That's just more they were playing the Saints. You know what I mean?
That's very true. The Saints beat a lot of teams. But, I was hoping Cooper Kupp can get back because he was having a pretty good season before then. And I think he might have been the Rams' leading pass catcher before that. But, when you have Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods, it's not really something to worry about too much.
Yep. All right, well, other news in the NFL this week, there were actually a number of pretty decent upsets. The Browns beat the Falcons. The Bills beat up on the Jets, and the Titans beat the Patriots. Austin, which of those do you think stands out the most?
I think the Browns not only beating the Falcons, but low-key blowing them out was a shocker. Baker Mayfield, I think he completed his first 13 passes like 100% completion rate, had like a damn near perfect first half. I'm just like shocked that like they just did that to the Falcons, who I regard as like an upper tier team in the NFL, just because maybe they're not gonna be like a top flight Super Bowl contender, but they're always contenders and always finding a way into the playoffs over these past few years. And the fact that like a rookie quarterback kind of just ran a train on them, I'm a little shocked by it. I'm also shocked by the Titans blowing out the Patriots as well. I mean, I'm not really shocked that the Titans won just because they're a sneaky team. Like, you know, they lose games that they should have won, but they also win games that you expect them to lose. And so, and plus the Patriots have not been looking that good this year, in my opinion. I don't really see a scenario where they're going to the Super Bowl. But I definitely am shocked by the freaking Browns blowing up the Falcons.
Yeah, for me, that was the game that stood out the most, especially when you look at kind of the Patriots and the Titans' history with like free agent signings and trades recently. Like Deion Lewis called the game personal for him. You know, as a former Patriot running back, he called the Patriots cheap.
Yeah.
After they didn't re-sign him, so I know he was definitely happy to get that win over the
Also,
Pats.
Malcolm Butler, he said like after the game that the entire time he was thinking about the benching in the Super Bowl from Bill Belichick. And so I guess it was more personal. Also, like their coach Mike Vrabel played for Bill Belichick, so there's a lot of personal agendas with this game, and I think those three guys really carried over to the rest of the team, and I think they just shocked me with how well they played because you know they've been an inconsistent team, struggling to find their footing on both the offensive and defensive ends, but like they looked like a top NFL team that yesterday. I don't think it'll carry over next week, but like anytime the Patriots lose, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. All right. Well, the Steelers and the Saints actually both put up over 50 points, 51 and 52 points, respectively. That was really impressive. You know, that's something I could definitely see happening with the Saints, but the Steelers really shocked me with that one.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they've been kind of inconsistent in the passing game this season. Like their running game with James Conner has been lights out all season, but Big Ben has been throwing a decent amount of interceptions. I think he threw like 5 TDs yesterday. So I'm pretty shocked by the fact that they put up the same numbers as the Saints just because the consistency hasn't been there to warrant it. But hey, Big Ben and Antonio Brown are still one of the best like quarterback receiver duos. I think it maybe in NFL history just because it's how prolific they are and how just so much of a beast Antonio Brown is.
Yeah, I think one thing that the Steelers do really well is share the wealth. You know, like Antonio Brown really doesn't get that many more touches than Juju Smith-Schuster. James Conner, you know, runs the ball a whole lot. Ben Roethlisberger is obviously involved on every play. I feel like your defenses can be kind of caught in their heels sometimes, not quite knowing what's going down. So I think we definitely saw that translate onto paper this week.
If we're speaking about the Steelers, I've read a report that the Steelers do not expect Le'Veon to report. So I mean, that's not really much of a surprise. I think Le'Veon just realizes it's in his best interest to not play this season just because like you risk injury, and if he gets injured, there's that big contract he's been seeking gone out from under the rug for him. So, I mean, this is not really a shock. I'm a little disappointed just because Le'Veon Bell is a very exciting and explosive NFL player to watch. But, you know, I understand his reasoning. And James Conner, honestly, might be better just on the way his numbers have been showing compared to Le'Veon early on in his career.
Yeah, you know, I saw a headline about Le'Veon probably not going to report to the Steelers, and it was labeled as breaking news, and that just kind of, I chuckled at that. I was like, we've known that for weeks. You know, that's not breaking news. I don't think anyone truly expected Le'Veon to come back, you know, recently anyways. In the first half of the season, sure, but...
Right now, he's taking his talent to the wherever he's working out fitness center. So there you go, Le'Veon. I hope you get that contract because you definitely deserve it.
Someone's going to pay out. All right, well, before we move over to the basketball side of things, Austin and I, we wanted to shout out Joe Mauer, the Minnesota Twins catcher who said he's a 6-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glover, former MVP, just generally a Minnesota Twin legend. He had a .306 career batting average. I mean, you can't really ask much more for a guy.
Yeah, I mean, It's kind of sad to see the way his end of his career played out, just because he was playing on Twins teams who, like, are honestly from one of the worst teams to like maybe mediocre at best, but also just like his health, like the fact that the last few seasons of his career he couldn't go behind the plate anymore, just because the knee problems were acting up. But I'm still happy for him. I still enjoyed watching him as a kid. I just remember him and Justin Morneau, the Eminem Bros, just putting up just absolute monster offensive stats. They literally were the Minnesota Twins from 2005 to 2010. So at the end of the day, I hate to see Joe Mauer go, but he's a legend in my book. He probably won't. He doesn't get the same recognition as most legends do, but in terms of consistency and just seems like an all around great guy. I'm happy for him, and I'm glad that he got to choose when his career ended.
Yeah, I think he'll make it in the Hall of Fame at some point.
I don't know about that. I just think baseball Hall of Fame standards are ridiculously high. But I mean, I would love to see Joe Mauer just because he's kind of one of those icons for me in terms of like baseball legends for growing up. So
Yeah, time will tell.
time will tell.
All right, on to basketball. Before we go to the NBA specifically, we're going to talk about the Ball brothers. LaMelo Ball recently enrolled at a Ohio high school called Spire Institute for his senior year of high school. He is returning to high school after a stint in a European basketball league.
Lithuania.
Exactly. So I don't know. He joins Robert Bobrisky, a 7'7" senior from Romania at Spire Academy. So that's going to be a pretty dangerous high school team to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for LaMelo to go back to school. I really just thought it was stupid for him to go overseas at 16 and try to play against like grown ass men. But I think LaMelo will light up the high school basketball ranks again. I mean, it sucks that he can't go to college, but thinking about LaMelo, he's not really made for college because this man just plays Fortnite in his free time. But I think I'm excited to see him play against people his age, and it shows how much skill he has and how much potential he has. Um, the other dude, though, that's a tall ass motherfucker. He is honestly he needs to bulk up, but I think that would be a nice connection if he has like Lonzo's passing skills, like easy alley oops on the daily.
Yeah, big time. That'll be a fun team to watch in high school. LaMelo Ball's brother, LiAngelo Ball, I saw some headlines this week about him seeking out a G League contract, but for being honest, I can't see it happening. He went undrafted, wasn't offered a spot on any summer league team. Um, you know, he's worked out with NBA teams, no offers of any kind. I don't know if it's in the cards for him.
I don't think it's in the cards for him right now. I think he's just a little hopeful that being related to Lonzo Ball will help him. But at the end of the day, Lonzo Ball worked his way to the league. You can't really just take a free ticket like that to the league. Plus, LiAngelo really hasn't played against top flight competition in over a year. I mean, he did play in Lithuania, but even then, it was still one of the lower leagues in Lithuanian basketball. I really don't see a scenario where he gets signed by a G League team. I definitely think it would benefit him to go somewhere overseas, maybe like China, Europe, develop his game a little more, and then maybe next year he can get an offer from a G League team. But I just think it's best for him to just go overseas right now and get a contract just because it's hurting him more by not playing. And I think also the fact that LeVar Ball is his dad, even though he's been a little less outspoken recently just because his whole failures with the Lithuanian basketball extravaganza, whatever you want to call it. I think it's not helped him in any sense, but if he just goes overseas, works on his game, shows that he deserves to at least get a G League contract, I don't see a scenario where he doesn't go to the NBA. I just think he needs to have that work ethic to get him there.
Yeah, I agree. I think overseas is really the only realistic option for him right now, and hope that he can improve his game and get noticed enough to, find a way in America. All right. Well, in the NBA, biggest headline of the week is Jimmy Butler. The saga has finally ended, folks. Jimmy Butler has been traded with Justin Patton to Philadelphia for Robert Covington, Dario Saric, and a 2022 second round pick. Um, I don't know. I think this is actually going to be really good for Jimmy Butler. To be put with Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and then you got like J.J. Redick and Markelle Fultz. I think that's going to be a tough team to beat in the East.
Yeah, that's looking like a nice team, especially because Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons like to go drive in the inside, and JJ Redick has really been their only spot up shooter. And I think that Jimmy Butler will help fill that role, give him another inside outside threat along with Joel Embiid. And also, it's just I'm glad that this is over. I just hated watching him play on the Timberwolves just because it's like he doesn't want to play on the team, and it kind of just shows the fact that like he was done with the organization. He refused to play back-to-back games. So I'm glad it's over. I still think Tibbs should have taken the Rockets deal first, 4 future first round picks, or even the Heat deal. Like Josh Richardson is a nice player, and I think he has a lot of potential to grow. He reminds me of Jimmy Butler, like a guy who is a late bloomer, needs time in the NBA to develop his game, but he's always improving each season. And I thought he would have been a nice piece to go with Cat and Wiggins, just because he's a solid 2-way player. But I'm excited to see Jimmy Butler back in the East, just because the East doesn't have quite the same star power as the West, so it kind of balances that out. But good for you, Jimmy Butler. You finally got your way out of Minnesota.
Yeah, I think talking about the Houston deal, I think part of the reason that Tibbs didn't want to take that one is because it would have meant dealing Jimmy Butler to another Western team. So here with Philly, at least he's out of the conference. You only have to play Philadelphia twice a year. But I also wanted to touch on the fact that throughout this whole, even like before Minnesota ever acquired Jimmy Butler, this process had begun, and now that we're at the end of it, you can kind of look back and basically what happened is Tibbs turned Zach LaVine, the pick that became Lauri Markkanen and Chris Dunn, into Robert Covington and Dario Saric. And I don't want to be hating on Robert Covington and Dario Saric. I mean, they're both quality starters who will give the Wolves switchability in their rotation, but man, I don't know if that trade-off just doesn't seem quite even to me.
If you look at the Wolves starting 5, like D Rose or Jeff Teague, with Andrew Wiggins at shooting guard, Robert Covington at small forward, who is, in my opinion, like a premier perimeter defender, and Dario Saric at the 4 and Cat at the 5. I think you that's a pretty solid trade in my opinion. But I would have liked to see them get like a first round pick at the very least out of Philadelphia, just because Jimmy Butler is a top 15 NBA player in my opinion. And I don't know, I just think that if you don't get a first round pick for a star player, it's kind of not worth the trade, unless you get another star player in return like the Raptors and the Spurs did. Like they both got 2 top 20 players in return. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad the Minnesota Timberwolves can turn their book on this and go to the next chapter, but it's kind of a bummer the haul they got.
Yeah, all right. Another headline that's circulating right now is Carmelo Anthony. His future in Houston looks to be in jeopardy. Apparently, he had meetings with officials with the team, and it looks like they didn't go so well for Melo. There's no confirmation yet, but it kind of looks like he's going to be released from the Rockets.
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't really working out to begin with, just because Melo just seemed a little out of place, and he doesn't really fit the Rockets' defensive scheme to switch everything, because he can't really switch onto anything because he gets exposed. Like, he's too small to guard the big men, too slow to guard guards and wing players. And also, it's just he takes too many shots and doesn't really give much offensive output to warrant it. So I think it's like he's just more detrimental to the Houston team. And obviously he likes playing with Chris Paul because they're banana boat buddies. But I think it's just in the best interest of both Melo and the Rockets to move on. I think Melo just needs to go to a team that recognizes him as like just, a guy off the bench, plays maybe 15, 20 minutes a game, can lead the bench unit, score like 10, 15 points a game. And I think that's what he needs to recognize, that he's no longer the player he is. And teams also need to recognize that he's no longer the player he once was. So I think it's beneficial for him to move on, and I'm excited to see where he goes.
So let me ask you this: wasn't Carmelo Anthony coming off the bench, leading the second unit, giving you 15 points tonight? Wasn't that the plan in Houston?
Yeah, it was the plan, but the thing is, though, Houston also doesn't have like the same weapons off their bench as they did last year to like help get the load off Melo. I think Melo definitely needs like another guy on the second unit to help him carry the load, just because he can't create the offense he once was able to. And obviously, I just think he didn't really fit Mike D'Antoni's scheme because, Melo's a good shooter, but he's not a good three-point shooter.
True. Yeah.
He's more of a mid-range guy, and with Houston, they're just trying to shoot as many threes as possible. So I think it's maybe more of a scheme fit, if anything.
That's fair, because you do have Eric Gordon coming off the bench as that being that second guy, or maybe first guy off the bench, really.
But with their injuries, he's been having to start a little bit.
That's definitely fair. You wonder if they had been able to play Harden, if Harden had been able to start and we had been able to see Eric Gordon come off the bench, you wonder if maybe Melo would have worked out a little bit better.
Yeah.
But regardless, it looks like he'll probably be gone in Houston. And to be honest, I can't really think of a team that like I think would work with him. I hate to say it, and like Melo's will always be a legend, but I think it might just be time to hang it up, unless he wants to maybe go make just a shit ton of money in Europe somewhere.
I don't know. I definitely think Melo can provide an NBA team with, a couple points off the bench, but at the end of the day, you just don't expect Melo to be old Melo. He's not the guy that's gonna put up close to 30 points a game anymore. He's lost a few steps since his prime, and I just think he's not really fitting into this whole new NBA style. Whereas Vince Carter has adapted to the athleticism and high flying of the late 90s into the more mid-range game in the mid 2000s, and even involving his 3-point shooting as the league went towards that. Melo doesn't have that same adaptability. He's refused to change his game or work on different aspects of his game. So I don't know. I think maybe the Bucks could be an option if they want some veteran presence, but at the end of the day, I don't really see a scenario where what team would really want him.
Yeah, I feel that. All right, well, there were a couple big-name minor injuries this week. Westbrook sprained his ankle after landing kind of awkwardly on Anthony Davis's foot, and Curry strained his left adductor in the third quarter against the Bucks. Both of these injuries look to probably sideline their respective players for maybe a week or two, but I don't think either of them are going to be too significant when you look at the full season as a big picture.
I mean, obviously with the Warriors, an injury to Steph Curry is a bummer, but at the end of the day, you still have KD and Klay, who are top 20 scorers in this league. Draymond's coming back from his injury, so I think it's not going to hurt the Warriors as much. It sucks, though, because I enjoy watching Steph Curry play, and he's kind of my boy. Greatest player of all time, in my opinion. But that's a little biased. But I think it hurts the Thunder more with having Westbrook out, just because him and Paul George have literally been carrying the team on their backs. And I just think the Thunder need more help with them. And Westbrook has been having a really good season so far. But, it's kind of a bummer because outside of Paul George and Russell Westbrook, the Thunder don't really have that good, consistent third option with them. So I think the Thunder might be struggling for some wins.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the case that Steven Adams is that guy, but I definitely think their bench could use some more scoring and help.
I mean, Steven Adams is their defensive anchor, but I think a lot of his offense is generated off Russell Westbrook missed layups or dunks or just lobs.
Or just even spacing that Westbrook provides. And, without Westbrook on the floor, that spacing is just not going to be there. So it'll be interesting to see how the Thunder cope moving forward. As for the Warriors and Curry, I feel like they've kind of been here before.
Mm-hmm.
Curry's missed time in the past. They have the power and the talent to win games without him, so I really don't see this being too big of a deal for them.
Yeah, and it's not it's not a major injury. It's definitely just a minor injury. So I don't think it's going to affect Curry once he gets back. I think he'll keep lighting it up once he gets back. It sucks though because he's been having an MVP like season thus far and leads the league in scoring still. But I think it's the right approach to just rest him until he's fully healed, and that way he doesn't miss a mark once he comes back.
Yeah, all right. Well, actually, speaking of the Warriors, Austin, you and I wanted to talk a little bit about our respective favorite teams. I'm a Blazer fan. You're obviously a Warrior fan. Both of those teams are number 1 and 2 in the West right now. As far as the Blazers, I can tell you that this morning ESPN ranked us number 4 in the league. NBA.com actually ranked us number 2 ahead of the Warriors. I gotta say, even as a Blazers fan, that felt extremely generous. I think at 3 or 4 is kind of where we belong.
I mean,
now.
The Blazers have definitely been a hot team over this past month, and the Warriors have had a slip up against the Bucks. But every team has an off game, especially with the Bucks. Like watching that game, the Warriors struggled to make shots that game, so it happens.
Well, and you were missing Draymond Green, and then Steph Curry went down like halfway through too. Yeah, that was the game going down.
That was the game. And obviously, I mean, the Blazers, though, Damian Lillard definitely should be in the MVP conversation, without a doubt. I don't see why people aren't talking about him as much as they should be.
It's that Pacific Northwest. Any media we get is bad, but It's okay. Like, I feel like our team plays with a chip on our shoulder, and that's kind of what we thrive on.
Plus, CJ has definitely been turning it up.
CJ actually,
after he had a really slow start, he scored like 40 points.
Yeah. So he kind of came into the season on a little slump, and then this past week he had a 40-point game and a 30-point game, and he was actually named Western Conference Player of the Week. So it was nice to see him bounce back. Nurkic has been extremely efficient. Zach Collins has provided great defense off the bench. Our bench is actually part of the reason I think we're having a better season this year. We added Seth Curry and Nick Stauskas, who have provided much needed perimeter shooting, and that kind of allows Evan Turner to move into more of a
facilitator, ball handler type playmaker.
Exactly.
I mean, I think the Blazers, they're smart in free agency. Everyone wanted them to make a big splash just because, you have Dame, you have CJ, and if they had like that third star, it would help. But I mean, retaining Nurkic was huge. I also think signing like 2 spot-up shooters in Stauskas and Curry really helps the bench, just because Evan Turner isn't expected to generate most of the offense. He's expected to make plays, and I think if you saw his role with the Boston Celtics a few years ago, that's his best. That's when he's at his best, when he's not supposed to carry the offensive load. He's just supposed to, make the plays and set up those plays. So I think the Blazers are definitely going to keep it up for the rest of the season. I don't see a scenario where they go down unless injuries.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. I gotta let you know real quick. Damian Lillard, 8th in the league in scoring per game. He's actually the 2nd in scoring per second half, though. So Dame time comes around in the fourth quarter, and the other teams better watch out. So he just actually got his 3,000th career assist last night. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I think that this year he's kind of has the ability to dish out more assists and passes to his teammates, because the supporting cast is just kind of stepping up their shooting and aggressiveness, which helps the team a lot in the long run.
Yeah, he improves every offseason. Like, I definitely think he could have did a little more with like facilitating last year, and he's definitely proved me wrong with that. So I hope.
Well, not necessarily proved you wrong, but he's improved that aspect of his game. Yeah, this year, big time.
Yeah, like last year it was his defense that improved remarkably, and now it's just really, he's becoming a really complete player, and I definitely think he should sneak into top 10 NBA player.
I think one aspect that people don't talk about when it comes to Dame's game is his leadership qualities. Like, obviously I'm biased, but he's got to be at least one of the best leaders in the NBA. I mean, he's usually calm, collected. He lets people know what they want to do. He encourages everybody. Positive reinforcement is huge. I struggle to think of another player who is quite as graceful in their leadership role.
Maybe Steph Curry. Yeah, I think like the culture is built around Steph Curry, and Steph Curry knows that, but rather than have like a big ego about it, he's just like, yeah, man, like you're my teammate, and I'm not gonna treat you like you're inferior to me. And everyone just builds off like that infectious personality, and they want to win for him. Same with the Blazers. Everyone on the team wants to win for Dame. I mean, obviously they want to win for themselves too, but it just helps having that guy who keeps urging them on, pushing them to be better. And it's like, how do you not want to win for a guy like that?
Mm-hmm. And we talked about this a little bit, but looking forward for the Warriors, like, they're number one in the West, probably gonna stay that way because they're the Warriors.
Yeah.
And then they got Boogie coming back in December.
I forgot about Boogie.
I mean, come on, man, like, that's crazy. You're gonna be starting 5 All-Stars.
And plus, like, we can stagger them too. We can have at least 2 All-Stars on the floor at all times. And our bench is looking real good. Like Alfonso McKinney, real shock for me. Just he's like becoming, I think, more important than Iguodala just because he has that consistent offensive output, like putting up at least maybe like 8 to 10 points a game, but providing stellar defense and just all around hustle. So I really like him. And the fact that Boogie's coming back. And we really haven't seen the true potential of the Warriors this season is scary, just because they've been pretty good this season, dominating in most aspects. But, I'm excited to see how this rest of the season plays out for both the Warriors and the Blazers because they're both really fun teams to watch.
Yeah, I got to add this little tidbit in. The Blazers actually would be tied for the number 1 spot in the West I'm still salty about this, when the Blazers got their first loss of the season to the Wizards, the final possession, Morris, who was on the bench at the time, kind of tugged on one of the Blazers players' shorts, and that was missed by the officials at the time. I'm pretty sure I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure normally that would be a tech, assuming that tech free throw would be made. The game never would have went to OT. Blazers would have won, and we'd be tied for first. Still a little salty, but that's okay. I'm getting over it.
I mean, the fact that they're number 2 in the West, and the West is the West.
The West is crazy.
The West, like, the teams speak for themselves. Like, that's a tough conference.
And it's only gonna get worse. I mean, last year, like the Jazz and the Pelicans, I think right now are both sitting out of playoff contention. We all know that's not gonna happen.
No.
The Rockets probably gonna get back up there as well. I think this first month of basketball has not been a super accurate representation of what the West looks like.
It's more just like a filling out process and giving time for the teams to gel. I think like AD's been injured and he's gonna come back, and I expect him to put up monster numbers because that's what AD does. Same with like Donovan Mitchell. I mean, he's a top 20 scorer in this league, but he's been struggling to find that consistency, and I think he'll find that once he turns it up later in the season. He'll get it back. So I'm not really worried about those 2 teams. I definitely think watching the West is going to be a fun experience overall.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. In the East too, honestly, we were kind of sleeping on the East, but now with the Jimmy Butler trade, the Celtics chemistry hasn't quite been there, but that's gonna get up there real quick. The Raptors, Kawhi and Lowry have been, I think, achieving or overachieving expectations. The Pacers, aren't bad. The Bucks are obviously doing real well right now. So just the NBA in general this is gonna be a real fun season to watch.
Just the East, they're just top heavy, and there's not much excitement after the Bucks, the
probably Pacers, like
Raptors, and Philly. Like I really don't see any other teams really contending for that Eastern or that finals spot. So yeah. I'm excited to see how this NBA season plays out. Just full of a lot of surprises, to be honest. But, that's what the NBA is, and it's why it's my personal favorite league.
Couldn't agree more. We got a long way to go, but that's all the time we got right now. So we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna thank you as always for tuning in to Crunch Time. All right, we want to let you know that we're not going to be back next week because we're going to be on Thanksgiving break. I'm going home to Portland. Austin's going home to the Bay Area. But catch us in 2 weeks. We'll be back. Don't worry.
We'll be back better than ever, and that just means more stuff to talk about. So I hope y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and don't miss us too much. See y'all later.